if you were asked to summarize the quality of 2013 in 3 words, what would those words be?
First word will be, I'm a producer before being a wine merchant, so challenging. Then humidity, and then pleasant at the end. So with the 3 words which I can develop, challenging because this was my 44th vintage, and it will rank on the viticultural side among the most difficult, among the top 3. Very difficult, because if you, without a lot of effort, it's a vintage we would have missed, like 63 or 65 at the time. So we needed a lot of attention, a lot of effort, which I can develop, of course. Then humidity was a big factor because it kept raining during the whole spring. And even if summer was beautiful, especially July and even August, it was still humid, it was tropical. We call it tropical, which means it was generating a lot of growing of the vines, and we had to control that. And at the end, for the people who made the effort in the vineyards, the wines are not great by any means, but rather charming, maybe early consuming, and I hope that in 6 years we will consider them in the same way as we consider the 07 today, something like that. With a plus, a technical surprising plus, which people will be surprised with the amount of rain we got, is that the wines, have no vegetal character. So we know that for sure, when you tested the wines, they have no pyrazine. That's for sure by analysis. So they don't have many qualities, but they don't have a vegetal character, which we can find sometimes in much better vintages, including, for instance, 2012, which is showing beautifully today before its bottling, but which has a slight vegetal character.
And if we were to classify together 2009 and 2010 as a vintage that we would give 18, 19, perhaps even 20 out of 20, how would, on the same rating, would you score, because people love scores, 2013? What would you be inclined to give it?
Well, 2013 is specifically difficult to rate because there are some disastrous wines, and it's nobody's fault. So let's speak of the successful wines. I mean, the guys who made the effort, and the guys who were lucky enough not to get the hailstorms, for instance. So then the vintage is worth 12 to 14 out of 20, with 1 or 2 peaks at 15 maybe, but no more than that. That's what I would say. And I cannot even criticize, and it's on the other side of the river from where we are today, on the other side between the Dordogne and the Garonne, when on August 2nd we were having dinner outside, I remember, we saw that those white clouds arriving, and we knew there would be disaster, they would bring death wherever they will fall, and luckily for us, in the Fonsac Saint-Émilion-Pomerol, they stayed in the Entre-deux-Mers, and you know that they destroy something like 10,000 hectares. And then even in the low part of Saint-Émilion, where they got slightly damaged, you get what we call the hell test, and that's rather sour, and you cannot correct it. You know, some of the off test you can correct with special fining, but the hell test you cannot correct. So those poor guys, either they were 100% destroyed, or if they were only 50% destroyed, they got the hell test, and we bought those wines in bulk, because they cannot afford bottling. There's an off-taste. So for those, of course, there would be no grade out of 20. But for the, let's say, most of the top chateaus who were successful and lucky, the grade is between 12 and 15.
Okay. And let's perhaps rephrase that. If the principal purpose of a wine and a vintage is to give pleasure, how much pleasure do you think 2013 will give in the short and medium term?
In the short and immediate term, it could go 14 to 16, the upper part of the bracket. And as an example, with Edouard, on a daily basis, I drink 04 today. Palmer's 04, you see.
Yeah.
Not the top chateaus, of course. And I enjoy them tremendously. You know, the alcohol is lower, around 12.5 to 13, which means I can drink almost a bottle by myself by meal. And I may be a little on the reddish side, but those are healthy wines, very, very pleasant, you see. So that's what we can expect. The top chateaus will be slightly above that, but the good wines of 13 will be in that range. Easy drinking wines in their youth.
And finally, we've seen since 2010 a very good but unquestionably very expensive vintage. We've seen pricing initiatives, not so much in your case, but I'm speaking in general of Bordeaux. Those pricing initiatives thrown away by almost being too little and too late. 2013 is a very, very small vintage, we know this. It's a vintage of very inconsistent quality. At its best, as you so eloquently said, you will have wines which will give pleasure in the short and medium term. In general, again, not speaking of Jean Moueix, what do you think Bordeaux should do to humour and honour its customers?
Oh, it's a very obvious decision. Everybody should lower its price by 20% at least. But this is impossible practically because all the growers, and I do mean all of them, they had a reduced quantity in terms of grapes, in terms of wine, a severe selection, and at the end they have minus 30%, minus 50%, and in some cases minus 60 or 70%. So these people, even if they have a good intention, you cannot convince them to lower the prices, you see. And then it's twofold, because the consumer says, hey, that's none of my business. When they make a huge vintage with a big profit, they don't lower the prices for that. And in the meantime, the grower says, gosh, I made half a crop, so why should I lower my price? This we have faced already for the past 2 months, because we have bought roughly 20 chateaux at this point from the right bank. And it's so simple to explain, but people, you cannot convince people. The most we have got was probably 5%, just discount. They create a discount just to please you, but they see their income. People in the wine business, and especially the wine producers, they have not realized that it's a business like another one, and that you can lose money 2 years out of 10, probably, like in any business. They cannot understand. They should at least break even. So that's why don't expect, unless the market, complete market, I'm not qualified for judging that, breaks in the coming week or weeks, people are not mentally ready to lower their prices seriously, even if they should. We know, all of us know they should and we should.
And finally, which is a very impertinent question to ask one of the greatest authorities of the right bank, but would you say that it's a Merlot vintage or a Cabernet vintage?
Well, if I speak only of the right bank, as you said, I was a so-called specialist, on our side, clearly, the Merlot did better. for a very simple reason, is that the Merlot, especially on the young vines on the gravelly soils, which are three conditions, did get to a certain ripeness, not perfect ripeness, but certain ripeness. The old Merlots on clay soils did not get the perfect ripeness and also rather produce wines which are rather crude. Needless to say, the Cabernet, even on gravelly soils, did not get perfect ripeness. And what does that mean? On such a humid vintage with so much water, they began to rot before they get perfectly ripe. So what I can say, I think it's more of a Merlot vintage than a Cabernet Franc for the right bank. For the left bank, I cannot really speak with enough knowledge and understanding. I tasted a few good wines at Saint-Estèphe because they were lucky on the very top of the Médoc to get a little less water than other parts of Bordeaux, including us. They may have been a little more successful with the Cabernet. For us, it's a Merlot year on gravelly soils. That's the shortest summary I can give you.
Mr. Moueix, thank you very, very much indeed.